The sound of nails frantically scratching against tile echoed through the quiet morning hush of Oak Ridge Police Station. Officer Ryan Mitchell looked up from his paperwork just as the front door burst open, crashing against the wall. A bloodied German shepherd stood in the doorway, sides heaving, eyes wild with desperation. In her mouth, hanging limply, was a tiny puppy. Blood dripped from the dog's paws onto the white floor tiles, creating a crimson trail as she limped purposefully toward the officers. No one moved. The station fell deathly silent as the German shepherd approached the center of the room, her amber eyes scanning each face as if searching for something or someone. With painstaking gentleness, she laid the puppy on the floor. The tiny creature, eyes not yet open, squirmed weakly and let out a pitiful whimper that broke the stunned silence. The mother dog looked directly at Ryan, a strange intelligence burning in her gaze that sent a chill down his spine. He'd seen that look before, but not on a stray. That was the look of a trained police dog. Before anyone could react, the dog turned and bolted back through the door, leaving paw prints of blood and mud in her wake. Officers exchanged bewildered glances as Ryan knelt beside the trembling puppy. "What in God's name just happened?" Chief Warren whispered. Ryan gently touched the puppy's head, his heart racing. "She's coming back," he said with absolute certainty. "And whatever she's running from, it's worse than we can imagine." Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments, along with the city you're watching from. Now let's continue with the story. The Oak Ridge Police Department served a town just small enough that everyone recognized each other at the grocery store, but large enough that trouble found its way in from time to time. Officer Ryan Mitchell hadn't always been stationed here. At 38, the lines around his eyes told stories of bigger cities and harder cases. 7 years ago, he'd been an acclaimed canine handler in Chicago until the night that changed everything. His partner, a German shepherd named Max, took a bullet meant for Ryan during a drug bust gone wrong. The image of Max's eyes as the life drained from them still haunted Ryan's dreams, which is why he'd requested a transfer to sleepy Oak Ridge, where he thought the memories might not follow so closely. Chief Warren had welcomed Ryan's experience, even if he sensed the younger officer was running from something. The department was small but dedicated. 12 officers in total, including Officer Linda Parker, Ryan's current partner. Linda was a local, born and raised in Oak Ridge, with a fierce dedication to the community that sometimes put her at odds with the town council over budget allocations. At 32, she had the kind of no-nonsense attitude that balanced Ryan's occasional brooding, making them an effective, if unlikely, team. The station itself was housed in a renovated building from the 1950s, all polished wood and squeaky floors that announced visitors before they reached the front desk. Recently, a string of break-ins on the east side of town had kept the small force busier than usual, with suspicions that drugs were finding their way into Oak Ridge from neighboring counties. What no one at the station could have known that morning was the history of the bloodied German shepherd who had just disrupted their routine. She had once been known as Stella, a decorated police dog from the Millfield K-9 unit, 2 counties over. After an injury to her back leg during a pursuit left her unable to continue service, she had been retired and adopted by what the department believed was a caring family. The reality had been far different. Sold again to cover gambling debts, Stella had been forced into an underground breeding program for fighting dogs, her police training making her offspring particularly valued for their intelligence and strength. The German shepherd returned within minutes, her pace more labored as she carried a second puppy through the door. Ryan had already grabbed a blanket from the break room, spreading it on the floor near the front desk. Linda cleared the area, pushing chairs aside to create space as the dog placed the second puppy next to its sibling with the same gentle precision. The mother's sides heaved with exhaustion, but her eyes remained alert, darting between her puppy and the door. "She's going back out," Ryan said, his voice barely above a whisper. Chief Warren stepped forward. "Should we stop her?" Ryan shook his head. "No, there are more puppies. She's bringing them to safety." True to Ryan's prediction, the dog limped back toward the entrance, her determination visibly warring with her physical condition. Blood still trickled from cuts on her paws, leaving a spotty trail across the floor. The officers watched in stunned silence as she disappeared again into the morning light. "Call Dr. Patel," Ryan instructed Linda. "Tell her it's an emergency." Linda nodded and reached for the phone while Officer Wilson, a recent transfer from the county sheriff's department, knelt to examine the puppies. "They can't be more than 10 days old. Eyes aren't even open yet." The third time the German Shepherd returned, her movements were noticeably slower. The puppy in her mouth appeared smaller than the others, its tiny body barely moving. Ryan stepped forward to help as the mother dog's legs trembled beneath her. She allowed him to take the puppy and place it with its siblings, but her eyes never left his hands. There was an unmistakable intelligence in her gaze that struck Ryan, a trained vigilance he recognized from his years as a canine handler. "One more," Ryan murmured to her. "You can do it, girl." The dog seemed to understand, gathering her remaining strength to turn back toward the door. This time, her exit was unsteady, her body weaving slightly as she disappeared. Dr. Patel arrived before the dog returned with her final puppy. A small woman with efficient movements and calm energy, she'd been Oak Ridge's veterinarian for over 15 years. She assessed the situation quickly, opening her medical bag as Ryan explained what had happened. "Extraordinary," she said, examining the puppies. "She's chosen to bring them here specifically. That's not random behavior." When the German Shepherd finally returned with the fourth puppy, the effort had clearly taken its toll. She placed the last pup down and then collapsed beside her litter, her body shuddering with each labored breath. Ryan approached slowly, speaking in the low, measured tone he'd once used with his canine partner. "You're safe now," he said, kneeling beside her. "You did good, girl." As Dr. Patel began examining the puppies, Ryan gently ran his hand over the mother dog's matted fur. She was severely undernourished, her ribs prominent beneath her coat. Multiple scars, both old and new, marked her body. But it was what he found beneath the dirt and tangles at her neck that made Ryan's breath catch. "Chief," he called, his voice tight, "take a look at this." Beneath a layer of mud was a small metal tag, partially embedded in the dog's skin as if someone had tried to remove it. Ryan carefully wiped it clean, revealing an official canine unit identification number. "She's a police dog," Ryan said, a mixture of anger and awe in his voice. "Or she was." Chief Warren leaned closer. "Can you make out the number?" Ryan nodded, reciting it as Linda wrote it down. "Run it through the database. Let's find out where she came from and how she ended up like this." Dr. Patel looked up from examining the fourth puppy, her expression grave. "This little one is in bad shape, severely dehydrated, and the mother has multiple infections, possible internal bleeding." She gestured to the visible wounds. "These aren't accidental injuries. Someone did this to her." Ryan's jaw tightened as he watched the mother dog struggling to stay conscious, her eyes constantly checking on her puppies, even as her strength failed. Despite her condition, she maintained the disciplined alertness of a trained canine officer, watching, assessing, protecting. She knew exactly what she was doing bringing them here, Ryan said quietly. She was looking for backup. As if confirming his words, the German Shepherd's eyes locked with his, and Ryan felt the familiar connection he'd once shared with Max, that wordless communication between handler and canine. In that moment, he made a silent promise to the exhausted mother and her vulnerable puppies. Whatever she was running from, whoever had done this to her, they would face justice. He would make sure of it. The German Shepherd's demeanor changed suddenly, just as Dr. Patel was finishing her initial treatment. The dog's ears pricked forward, her body tensing, despite her exhaustion. A low growl rumbled from her throat as her eyes fixed on the station's front windows. Ryan, who had been helping Dr. Patel clean the mother's wounds, immediately recognized the alert posture from his canine handling days. "Something's wrong," he said, getting to his feet. The other officers in the room noticed the shift too, hands instinctively moving toward their service weapons. Linda moved closer to the puppies, positioning herself between them and the door. Ryan approached the window cautiously, scanning the parking lot and the street beyond. At first, nothing seemed out of place in the quiet morning scene, until his eyes caught on a black pickup truck parked at the edge of the woods that bordered the east side of the station. The vehicle hadn't been there earlier, and something about its positioning, partially concealed by the tree line, triggered Ryan's instincts. "Chief," he called quietly, "there's a truck by the woods, tinted windows, can't make out the driver." Chief Warren joined him at the window, his weathered face creasing with concern. "Never seen it around town before." The German Shepherd's growl intensified, her eyes never leaving the window. Despite her injuries and the evident pain she was in, she struggled to her feet, positioning herself between her puppies and whatever threat she sensed outside. "She knows that truck," Ryan said with certainty. "That's what she's running from." Chief Warren nodded slowly. "Wilson, stay with Dr. Patel and the dogs. Linda, watch the back entrance. Ryan, with me, we'll check it out." As they headed toward the door, Ryan hesitated, looking back at the German Shepherd, who was now standing guard over her puppies despite Dr. Patel's gentle attempts to make her rest. Their eyes met briefly, and Ryan felt that same connection he'd experienced earlier. A silent understanding between two professionals who spoke the same language of protection and duty. "We'll be right back," he told her softly. Whether she understood his words or not, something in his tone seemed to register. As she settled slightly, though her alert posture remained. Outside, the morning had warmed, but Ryan felt a chill as they approached the black truck with cautious, measured steps. They split up, approaching from different angles, Ryan taking the lead while Chief Warren provided cover. The vehicle was empty but recently used, the hood still warm to the touch. "Nobody inside," Ryan reported, peering through the windows. What he saw in the truck bed, however, made his blood run cold. Dog crates, chain collars, and what appeared to be modified cattle prods were partially covered by a tarp. Worse still were the bloodstains on the metal floor of the bed and scratch marks along the sides, desperate claw marks from animals trying to escape. "Chief, you need to see this," he called, his voice tight with controlled anger. Warren surveyed the evidence, his expression darkening. "Dog fighting," he said grimly. "Looks like our mother dog in there escaped from these people." Ryan nodded, noticing something else. "Look at the ground. Footprints heading into the woods. Recent, too." Beneath the trees they found more evidence. Cigarette butts, empty beer cans, and disturbed undergrowth leading deeper into the forest. Something about the scene didn't sit right with Ryan. The truck was parked too close to the station, as if someone had been watching them. And why leave incriminating evidence in plain sight? "I don't like this," he said, scanning the tree line. "These guys were in a hurry, or they're coming back soon, either way." His words were cut short by the sound of the station door opening. Both officers turned to see two men approaching the building. From their distance, Ryan could make out their rough appearance, one tall and lanky, the other stockier with a baseball cap pulled low over his face. They moved with a purpose that set off warning bells in Ryan's mind. "Back to the station," Warren ordered, and they began moving quickly but quietly through the trees, maintaining visual contact with the building. Through the windows, Ryan could see the men entering the station. Even from a distance, he noticed the German Shepherd's reaction. Her hackles raised, teeth bared as she positioned herself in front of her puppies. Officer Wilson and Linda had moved to intercept the visitors, but something in their body language told Ryan this wasn't a casual visit. They reached the side entrance just in time to hear raised voices from the main room. "That dog is my property," a gruff voice was saying. "Found her wandering and took her in out of kindness. Now she's run off with her pups, and I'm just here to collect what's mine." Ryan entered silently through the side door, positioning himself where he could observe without being immediately noticed. The speaker was the stockier man, his hands shoved in his jacket pockets, stance aggressive. His companion stood slightly behind him, watchful eyes scanning the room. "Sir," Linda was saying, her voice professional but firm, "this dog appears to be a former police K9. We've already identified her service number and are contacting her original department. Additionally, she's in need of medical attention for injuries that frankly don't look like accidents." The man's expression darkened, but his smile remained fixed. "Dogs get into fights, not my fault if she's scrappy. As for being police property, I bought her fair and square from a fella who said she was retired. Got the papers to prove it." Ryan stepped forward then, making his presence known. "If you have legitimate ownership papers, We'd be happy to see them, he said evenly. But right now, we're investigating potential animal cruelty, and this dog and her puppies are evidence. The German Shepherd's growl deepened at the sight of the men, her body trembling with what Ryan recognized wasn't fear but rage. One of the puppies began whimpering, and despite her obvious desire to confront the intruders, the mother dog's training held, she remained at her post, protecting her vulnerable charges. The taller man spoke for the first time, his voice deceptively casual. Look, officers, we don't want no trouble. Just give us the dog and pups, and we'll be on our way. No need to make this official. Chief Warren stepped forward, his authority clear in every movement. I'm afraid it's already official. This is now an active investigation. He gestured toward the door. You gentlemen are welcome to come back with proper documentation and speak to us again. Until then, I suggest you leave. The tension in the room stretched tight as a wire. Ryan could see the calculation in the men's eyes, weighing their options, measuring the odds. The German Shepherd's growl never ceased, a continuous warning that vibrated through the room. Finally, the stockier man shrugged, his casual gesture belied by the cold anger in his eyes. Have it your way, Chief. We'll be back with our papers. As they turned to leave, he looked directly at the German Shepherd. See you soon, Stella. The use of her name sent a chill through Ryan. These men knew exactly who this dog was, and they weren't going to give her up easily. After the men left, the atmosphere in the station remained tense. The German Shepherd, Stella, as they now knew her, had not relaxed her vigilant stance, though she allowed Dr. Patel to continue treating her wounds. Ryan paced the room, his jaw tight with controlled anger. The fact that these men had walked into a police station with such confidence suggested they either had powerful connections or nothing to lose. Neither option boded well. We need to run a full background check on both of them, Chief Warren said, already moving toward his office. Linda, did you get their license plate? Linda nodded, handing him a slip of paper. Already ran it. Trucks registered to a Darren Mercer, address in Millfield County. Multiple priors for assault, illegal gambling. Nothing specifically for animal fighting, but he's been on their county's radar for a while. Ryan knelt beside Stella, gently stroking her head as Dr. Patel finished bandaging her paws. You've got a history with Millfield, don't you, girl? He murmured. Let's find out what it is. The call to Millfield K9 unit confirmed what Ryan had suspected. Stella had been a decorated police dog, specialized in narcotics detection and apprehension. After suffering a leg injury during a pursuit that had left her with a permanent limp, she had been retired early and adopted by a family, supposedly vetted by the department. That had been 8 months ago, and the Millfield unit was shocked to hear of her current condition. We need to get her and the puppies to a secure location, Ryan said after hanging up the phone. Those men will be back, and next time they might not be so polite. Chief Warren nodded grimly. I've already called in additional officers. We'll set up a protective detail. With all due respect, Chief, Officer Wilson interrupted, stepping forward. Are we really allocating department resources to protect a dog? We've got 3 open burglary cases and that assault from last weekend. The county shelter can handle this. The room fell silent. Wilson was new to the force, transferred from the county sheriff's department just 3 months ago. At 35, he brought experience but also a by-the-book approach that sometimes clashed with Oak Ridge's more community-oriented policing style. That dog is evidence in what appears to be an organized animal fighting operation, Ryan countered, his voice level but intense. And more importantly, she's a former protector who deserves our protection. Wilson scoffed. Officer, it's a dog, Mitchell, an animal, not a person with a badge. She wore a badge, Ryan said quietly, his eyes never leaving Wilson's. And from the looks of it, she suffered more in the line of duty than some officers I know. Chief Warren stepped between them, his weathered face stern. That's enough. Wilson, I understand your concern about resources, but this isn't just about a dog. Those men who came in here, they're connected to something bigger, and this animal might be our way in. Dr. Patel looked up from examining one of the puppies, her expression troubled. I hate to add to your problems, but this little one isn't doing well. She indicated the smallest puppy, the last one Stella had brought in. He's severely dehydrated and showing signs of possible internal injuries. He needs more intensive care than I can provide here. Ryan exchanged glances with Linda. They were now facing multiple problems: protecting Stella and her puppies, investigating the men who claimed to own her, and ensuring the sick puppy received proper care, all while maintaining normal police operations with their limited staff. My clinic is better equipped, Dr. Patel continued, but it's not secure. If these men are as dangerous as they seem. I have an idea, Linda said suddenly. My sister's place, just outside town. She's a nurse, lives alone on 5 acres, plenty of room, private, and only a few people know I'm related to her. She looked at Chief Warren. We could set up a temporary safe house there while we build our case. The chief considered it briefly before nodding. Good thinking, Parker. Wilson, you and Ramirez coordinate with dispatch to maintain regular patrols. I don't want those men finding out where we've taken Stella. Wilson's expression made it clear he still disagreed with the allocation of resources, but he nodded curtly and left to carry out his orders. The tension in his departure was palpable. He's not wrong about one thing, Chief Warren said once Wilson was out of earshot. We are stretched thin. I can justify this as part of an investigation for now, but we need to show results quickly. Ryan nodded, already planning next steps. I'll contact Millfield, see what they know about how Stella ended up with these people. There's got to be a paper trail somewhere. As they prepared to transport Stella and her puppies, news of the morning's events had already begun to spread through the small town. By midday, a small crowd had gathered outside the station, their reactions mixed. Many were supportive, having heard of the injured mother dog who'd sought refuge at the police station. Others, however, voiced concerns that echoed Wilson's, questioning why police resources were being dedicated to animals when human-related crimes remained unsolved. Martha Jenkins, a longtime Oak Ridge resident and head of the town council, confronted Chief Warren as he supervised the loading of Stella and her puppies into Dr. Patel's vehicle. Frank, she said, using the chief's first name with the familiarity of old acquaintance. People are talking. The Hendersons had their store broken into twice this month, and now they're seeing officers focused on saving strays. It doesn't look good. Chief Warren sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. Martha, it's more complicated than that. This isn't just about a dog. We're investigating what appears to be an organized crime operation. Martha raised an eyebrow, skeptical. Dogfighting? In Oak Ridge? Frank, this isn't the city. Crime doesn't check the population sign on its way into town, he replied. Trust me, there's more here than meets the eye. Martha wasn't entirely convinced, but she nodded reluctantly. Just be careful. The budget review is next month, and some council members are already talking about resource reallocation. As she walked away, Ryan approached the chief. Problem? Warren shook his head. Nothing new, small-town politics. He looked at Ryan seriously. But she's not wrong about the optics. We need to make sure this investigation yields results, or we'll have more than budget cuts to worry about. Ryan nodded, his determination unwavering. We'll get results. Those men practically confessed when they walked in claiming ownership of an abused police dog. We just need to build the case properly. Meanwhile, Linda had finished securing the transport carrier in Dr. Patel's SUV. The sickest puppy had been placed in a special warming box, while the other 3 were nestled together in a padded crate. Stella, however, was proving more difficult to load. Despite her injuries, she remained alert and anxious, her eyes constantly scanning for threats. She doesn't want to get in, Linda called to Ryan. I think she's still in protection mode. Ryan approached slowly, speaking in the calm, authoritative tone he'd once used with his canine partner. Stella, he said, noting how her ears perked at the name. We need to move you somewhere safe. You can trust us. The German Shepherd looked at him intently, then at her puppies already loaded in the vehicle. She seemed torn between her training to obey commands and her maternal instinct to remain vigilant. Ryan knelt to her level, still maintaining a respectful distance. I know you're trying to protect them. That's your job right now. But we're going to help you do that. Partner. The word seemed to register with her. Stella's posture shifted subtly, and Ryan recognized the change immediately. She was responding to him as a handler. With cautious movements, she finally allowed herself to be guided into the larger crate positioned so she could still see her puppies. As they closed the vehicle doors, Ryan noticed Wilson watching from the station entrance, his expression unreadable. The divide within the department was becoming increasingly evident, and Ryan knew it would only widen if they didn't resolve this case quickly. The convoy to Linda's sister's house, consisting of Dr. Patel's SUV, Linda's patrol car, and Ryan following in his personal vehicle, took back roads to avoid being tracked. The property was ideal for their purposes, a modest farmhouse set back from the road, surrounded by mature trees that provided natural screening from passing traffic. Nicole Parker, Linda's sister, had agreed immediately when contacted, preparing a spare room for their unusual guests. "It's not exactly what I had in mind when I said you should visit more often," Nicole remarked to Linda as they carried in supplies. A pediatric nurse by training, Nicole approached the situation with professional calm, helping Dr. Patel set up a makeshift veterinary station in the mudroom. The smallest puppy, now on IV fluids, remained a serious concern. "The next 24 hours will be critical," Dr. Patel explained as she checked his vitals. "He's stable for now, but barely." Stella refused to settle, limping from puppy to puppy, checking each one despite her own obvious pain. When she reached the sick puppy, she gently nuzzled him, then looked up at Ryan with an expression that seemed to ask for reassurance. "Dr. Patel is doing everything possible," he told her softly. "You need to rest now. That's an order." Whether it was the command in his voice or her own exhaustion finally catching up, Stella reluctantly lay down beside the makeshift incubator holding her weakest offspring, her eyes still vigilant but her body finally surrendering to fatigue. As evening approached, Ryan received a call from Chief Warren. "We've got something," the chief said without preamble. Millfield PD sent over Stella's adoption records. The family that supposedly adopted her doesn't exist. Fake address, fake references. But the application was processed by someone in their department, a records officer named James Tanner. Ryan frowned. "They're looking into him?" "They are now. And here's where it gets interesting. Tanner resigned 3 months ago. No forwarding address, just disappeared. But before he left, he processed the paperwork for 4 other retired canines, all of which are now unaccounted for." The implications were clear. Someone inside law enforcement had been funneling retired police dogs into the fighting circuit. The thought made Ryan's stomach turn. These animals had served faithfully only to be betrayed by the very system they'd protected. "There's more," Warren continued. "I ran background checks on our visitors. The bigger one, Mercer, has ties to gambling operations in 3 counties. His partner, Ray Conley, has a history of illegal breeding, mostly pit bulls for fighting. They're not just small-time dogfighters, they're suppliers." Ryan glanced at Stella, now sleeping fitfully beside her puppies. "So they came for her because she's valuable to them. A trained police dog would produce puppies with the right temperament for fighting." "Exactly. And they were confident enough to walk right into a police station to claim her. That suggests protection from someone with influence." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion from the makeshift veterinary area. Ryan hurried over to find Dr. Patel working frantically over the smallest puppy who had begun seizing. Stella was on her feet, whining anxiously as Nicole tried to gently restrain her. "His temperature's spiking," Dr. Patel said tersely. "I need to cool him down. Nicole, get me alcohol wipes and a fan if you have one." As they worked to stabilize the puppy, a new debate emerged. The tiny creature was clearly suffering, and even if he survived, Dr. Patel warned that he might have permanent neurological damage. "We need to consider whether continuing treatment is in his best interest," she said quietly once the seizure had passed and the puppy lay breathing shallowly in the incubator. "Sometimes the kindest thing we can do is prevent further suffering." Ryan looked at Stella, who had not left her puppy's side. The decision felt impossible, weighing the puppy's quality of life against the chance, however small, of recovery. It was a situation with no good answers, only hard choices. "Let's give him until morning," Ryan decided finally. "If there's no improvement—" He left the sentence unfinished, but everyone understood. Stella seemed to comprehend as well, settling beside the incubator with a soft whine that spoke volumes about her own distress. As night fell over the farmhouse, the group established a rotation for keeping watch. Linda took the first shift, positioned by the front window with a clear view of the approach to the house. Ryan, unable to sleep despite exhaustion, sat beside Stella, occasionally checking his phone for updates from Chief Warren. Around midnight, his phone buzzed with a text from Wilson, of all people. Scanner chatter about suspicious vehicle near Parker's sister's place. Probably nothing but heads up. Ryan immediately alerted Linda, who confirmed she hadn't seen anything unusual. Still, the message set him on edge. Very few people knew of their location, and while it could be coincidence, Ryan's instincts told him otherwise. "We should consider moving first thing tomorrow," he told Linda quietly. "If they've somehow tracked us here." Linda nodded grimly. "Nicole has a friend with a cabin in the mountains, even more isolated than this place. I'll make arrangements." As the night deepened, the farmhouse fell into uneasy silence. Outside, the wind picked up, branches scraping against windows in a rhythm that mimicked footsteps. Ryan found himself jumping at every sound, his hand straying to his service weapon. Beside him, Stella remained equally alert, her ears swiveling at the slightest noise, her body tense despite her injuries. They were both veterans, Ryan realized, both trained to detect danger, both carrying scars from past battles. And now they were both protectors, standing guard against threats that lurked in the darkness. The parallel struck him deeply, cementing his resolve to see justice done for this animal who had clearly never abandoned her duty, even when the system had failed her. As dawn approached with no sign of trouble, Ryan allowed himself to relax slightly. Perhaps Wilson's warning had been nothing more than standard caution. Or perhaps whoever was searching for them had lost the trail. Either way, Ryan knew this was just the beginning. The men who had come to claim Stella weren't going to give up easily. And somewhere out there, a corrupt law enforcement officer was still funneling retired police dogs into a cruel underground industry. The case was bigger than one injured German shepherd and her puppies. It represented a fundamental betrayal of trust that Ryan couldn't allow to stand. As the first light of day filtered through the windows, Ryan checked on the sick puppy. To his surprise and relief, the tiny creature was nursing weakly but steadily, his condition slightly improved from the night before. Dr. Patel, who had slept on a cot beside her patients, offered a cautious smile. "He's fighting," she said simply, "like his mother." Ryan nodded, gratified but still concerned. They had won this small battle, but the larger war was just beginning. And as the morning news began to filter in from his colleagues at the station, it became clear that public opinion in Oak Ridge was dividing sharply over the department's handling of the case. Some residents vocally supported the protection of Stella and her puppies, organizing donations of supplies and even offering reward money for information about the dog-fighting ring. Others, however, questioned the allocation of police resources to what they saw as an animal welfare issue rather than a criminal investigation. The division mirrored the split within the department itself, a rift that Ryan knew could hinder their investigation if not addressed. But as he watched Stella tenderly nuzzling her recovering puppy, he remained convinced they were doing the right thing. Some principles transcended policy manuals and budget allocations. Justice was justice, whether the victim walked on 2 legs or 4. Early the next morning, with the first puppy showing signs of improvement, the decision was made to relocate to the mountain cabin Linda's sister had arranged. The operation required careful coordination. Dr. Patel would drive her SUV with Stella and the puppies, accompanied by Nicole, whose nursing skills had proven invaluable. Linda would lead in her patrol car, while Ryan would follow behind in his vehicle, maintaining constant communication via radio. "We need to assume they're looking for us," Ryan reminded everyone as they loaded the vehicles. "No stopping unless absolutely necessary. If we get separated, continue to the destination. Chief Warren has the coordinates and will send backup if needed." The caravan departed just after dawn, taking back country roads to avoid main highways where they might be spotted. Though the morning was clear, weather reports predicted afternoon storms in the mountains, adding another layer of complexity to their journey. Linda led them on a circuitous route, occasionally doubling back to ensure they weren't being followed. 2 hours into the drive, as they navigated the winding roads leading up into the mountains, Linda's voice crackled over the radio. "Ryan, check your 6. Black pickup about half a mile back. Can't confirm it's our friends, but it's matching our turns." Ryan glanced in his rearview mirror. The truck was still distant, but its profile was unmistakable, the same vehicle they'd found at the station. "That's them," he confirmed grimly. "They must have been watching the farmhouse. Linda, can we get local units for an intercept?" "Negative," came Chief Warren's voice, monitoring from the station. "Nearest units are 20 minutes out. You're on your own for now." Ryan made a quick decision. "Dr. Patel, keep going with Nicole. Linda, drop back with me. We'll delay them while you get Stella and the puppies to safety." Dr. Patel's SUV accelerated ahead, while Linda slowed her patrol car, allowing Ryan to pull alongside. They positioned their vehicles side by side, effectively blocking the narrow mountain road. Both officers stepped out, weapons drawn but held at low ready. The black pickup slowed as it approached, stopping about 50 yards away. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the driver's door opened, and Darren Mercer stepped out, smiling coldly. "Officers," he called, his voice carrying in the mountain air. "Fancy meeting you here, still playing dog-sitter?" Ryan held his ground. "Mr. Mercer, you're interfering with a police investigation. Turn around and leave now, or you'll be facing obstruction charges on top of animal cruelty." Mercer laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the mountainside. "That's quite an accusation. I told you, that dog's my property. And where I come from, a man has a right to recover what's his." The passenger door opened and Ray Conley emerged, but something about his movement put Ryan instantly on alert. Unlike their previous encounter, Conley's hand wasn't visible. It remained behind the truck door. "Linda," Ryan said quietly, "he's armed." Before Linda could respond, a third man stepped out from the truck bed, someone they hadn't seen at the station. He was younger than the others, with the hard, lean build of someone accustomed to physical confrontation. What caught Ryan's attention, however, was the distinctive shape clipped to his belt, a police badge. "You didn't tell me we were dealing with brother officers," the newcomer said, his tone mocking as he addressed Mercer. "That changes things." Ryan felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. This had to be James Tanner, the missing records officer from Millfield PD, the man who had falsified Stella's adoption papers. The corrupt link that had fed retired canines into the fighting circuit. "Tanner," Ryan said, watching the man's expression shift to surprise. "Millfield's been looking for you." Tanner's surprise quickly morphed into a sneer. "Well, seems like my reputation precedes me. Makes this simpler, I suppose." He pulled a handgun from his waistband. Not a standard police issue, but a smaller, concealable weapon. "Here's how this goes. You two step aside. Tell us where you've taken the dog and her pups, and we all walk away. Nobody needs to get hurt over some animals." Linda's radio crackled with Dr. Patel's voice, but she quickly silenced it, not wanting to reveal that the veterinarian was still in range and potentially still trackable. "That's not going to happen," Ryan said evenly, his hand steady on his service weapon. "Put down the gun, Tanner. You're outnumbered and outgunned." Tanner laughed. "Am I? Because from where I'm standing, it's 3 against 2, and we've got nothing to lose." He gestured with his gun toward the mountain road beyond them. "That dog is worth a small fortune to us. Those puppies even more. You think we're just going to walk away?" The standoff stretched taut with tension, neither side willing to back down. Ryan knew their position was precarious. Help was too far away, and while he and Linda had the advantage of training and legal authority, Mercer and his associates had desperation and a willingness to cross lines that officers couldn't. Suddenly, the distant rumble of an engine broke the silence. All eyes turned toward the sound as a Millfield County Sheriff's Department SUV appeared around the bend, followed by 2 more patrol cars. Chief Warren must have called in reinforcements from the neighboring county. Tanner's expression darkened as he recognized his former colleagues. For a moment, Ryan thought he might surrender, but instead, the man made a desperate choice. With a shout to his companions, he fired a shot into the air and lunged back toward their truck. "Gun!" Ryan shouted, dropping to a crouch behind his vehicle door as Linda did the same. Mercer and Conley scrambled for cover, Conley finally revealing what he'd been hiding, a sawed-off shotgun that he now leveled toward the officers. The first shotgun blast shattered Ryan's rear window, sending glass cascading over the pavement. Linda returned fire, her shots pinging off the truck's metal body. The approaching sheriff's vehicles accelerated, lights flashing and sirens now blaring. In the chaos, Mercer managed to get back behind the wheel of the pickup. The engine roared to life as Tanner and Conley piled in, still firing sporadically to keep Ryan and Linda pinned down. With a screech of tires, the truck executed a wild three-point turn, then sped off in the direction Dr. Patel had gone. "They're going after Stella," Linda shouted, already running back to her patrol car. Ryan followed, heart pounding. The sheriff's vehicles pulled alongside them, an officer leaning out the window. "Warren sent us," he called. "Said you might need backup." 3 armed suspects in a black pickup, Ryan reported quickly. "They're pursuing a dark blue SUV with a K9 and puppies. Female driver, female passenger. Consider suspects armed and extremely dangerous." The sheriff's deputy nodded grimly. "We'll take lead. Stay close." The pursuit resumed, their expanded convoy now racing up the mountain road. Ryan's mind calculated distances and times. Dr. Patel had perhaps a 15-minute head start, but the steep roads would slow her down, especially with precious cargo. If Mercer pushed his truck to its limits, he might catch up before they reached the cabin. Linda's voice came through his radio, tense but controlled. "Ryan, there's a problem. Nicole says there's a landslide ahead on the main road. Dr. Patel is taking the Forest Service road as a detour." Ryan's grip on the steering wheel tightened. The Forest Service road was little more than a glorified dirt trail, narrower, rougher, and with fewer escape options. Perfect territory for an ambush. "Tell them to keep moving no matter what," he instructed. "We're 5 minutes behind you at most." The radio crackled again, but this time with static rather than Linda's voice. As they climbed higher into the mountains, communication was becoming increasingly unreliable. Ryan pressed harder on the accelerator, pushing his vehicle to its limits on the winding road. Ahead, the sheriff's SUV suddenly braked, forcing everyone behind to slow. As they rounded a bend, the reason became clear. The black pickup had stopped sideways across the road, effectively blocking the path. But there was no sign of Mercer, Tanner, or Conley. "It's a trap," Ryan realized aloud, even as the first shots rang out from the tree line. The deputies responded immediately, taking defensive positions behind their vehicles and returning fire toward the muzzle flashes visible among the trees. Ryan and Linda joined them, using their patrol car for cover. "They're trying to delay us," Linda shouted over the gunfire. "Dr. Patel and Nicole are on their own." Ryan made a split-second decision. "Cover me," he called to the nearest deputy, then sprinted for the forest edge where a narrow hiking trail paralleled the road. If he remembered the area correctly, that trail would eventually connect with the Forest Service road, possibly allowing him to reach Dr. Patel before Mercer's associates did. The deputy laid down, suppressing fire as Ryan disappeared into the trees. The sounds of the firefight receding behind him as he pushed deeper into the forest. The trail was steep and treacherous, roots and rocks threatening to trip him with every step, but he maintained his pace, driven by the knowledge that Stella and her puppies and the women protecting them were in imminent danger. Meanwhile, Dr. Patel navigated the rough Forest Service road with intense concentration, the SUV bouncing and sliding on the uneven surface. Beside her, Nicole kept a watchful eye on Stella and the puppies, ensuring they weren't being jostled too severely by the rough ride. "How much further?" Dr. Patel asked, grimacing as the vehicle bottomed out on a particularly deep rut. Nicole checked the GPS on her phone, its signal weak but still functioning. "About 3 miles to the cabin, but I'm not getting any reception to call for help." In the back, Stella had positioned herself protectively over her puppies, her body absorbing the worst of the impacts as the SUV bounced along. Despite her injuries, her focus remained absolute, the safety of her offspring, her only priority. The sky had darkened considerably, the promised afternoon storms gathering force. Thunder rumbled in the distance as fat raindrops began to pelt the windshield, further reducing visibility on the already challenging road. "I don't like this," Dr. Patel said, slowing the vehicle as the rain intensified. "If this gets much worse, we might have to." Her words cut off as headlights appeared in her rearview mirror, approaching rapidly from behind. The black pickup had found them. "Drive," Nicole urged. "Don't stop." Dr. Patel pressed the accelerator, but the SUV's tires spun in the rapidly muddying road before finding purchase. They lurched forward, but the pickup was gaining quickly. Its higher clearance and four-wheel drive better suited to the deteriorating conditions. The first impact came as a jolt, the pickup ramming their rear bumper, sending the SUV fishtailing on the slick surface. Dr. Patel fought for control, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. "Hold on," she shouted as the pickup rammed them again, harder this time. In the back, Stella barked frantically, trying to maintain her balance as the vehicle lurched wildly. The third impact proved catastrophic. The SUV's rear tire caught the edge of the road where rain had eroded the shoulder. For a moment, they teetered on the brink. Then gravity took over, pulling the vehicle down the steep embankment. The world became a chaotic blur of motion and noise as the SUV rolled, glass shattering and metal crumpling. Nicole screamed, reaching futilely for the carrier containing the puppies. Dr. Patel fought the airbag that exploded in her face, temporarily blinding her. When the vehicle finally came to rest on its side against a tree, an eerie silence fell, broken only by the patter of rain on the crumpled metal and the soft whimpering of the puppies. Stella, somehow still conscious despite being thrown against the interior of the SUV, struggled to orient herself, her protective instincts driving her to reach her offspring. Above them on the road, doors slammed as Mercer and his companions exited their truck to survey the damage. Their voices carried down the slope, discussing whether to descend to the crash site or wait for their prey to crawl out. Inside the mangled SUV, Dr. Patel regained consciousness first, blood streaming from a cut on her forehead. She turned to check on Nicole, who was slumped against her seatbelt, unresponsive but breathing. In the back, Stella had managed to free herself from her carrier, which had broken open in the crash. She was now frantically trying to reach the puppy carrier, which had been crushed against the side of the vehicle. "Stella," Dr. Patel called softly, aware that their attackers might hear. "We need to stay quiet." The German Shepherd paused, looking at her with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand the danger. But her maternal drive was too strong. She returned to pawing at the damaged carrier, determined to reach her puppies. Dr. Patel tried to move, but pain shot through her leg, suggesting it might be broken. Still, she managed to twist in her seat enough to assess the situation in the back. The carrier had been severely damaged, but she could see movement inside. At least some of the puppies had survived the crash. From above, footsteps approached the edge of the embankment, and Mercer's voice carried clearly. "I can see them down there. SUV's totaled, but they're moving around inside." "What about the dogs?" Tanner's voice replied. "Can't tell. Let's get down there and finish this." Dr. Patel's heart raced as she heard them beginning to descend the slope. With her injured leg and Nicole unconscious, they had no chance of escaping. Their only hope was that Linda and Ryan would somehow find them before it was too late. As if in answer to her unspoken prayer, a new sound cut through the rain, someone crashing through the underbrush from the direction opposite the road. A moment later, Ryan appeared, breathless and mud-spattered from his run through the forest. He took in the scene instantly. The crashed SUV, the injured occupants, and Mercer's group making their way down the embankment, still unaware of his presence. Making a quick decision, he ducked behind a fallen tree, drew his weapon, and shouted, "Police! Drop your weapons, and put your hands where I can see them." The command froze Mercer's group momentarily, giving Ryan the opportunity he needed. As they hesitated, confused by the voice coming from an unexpected direction, he circled to a better position, using the trees and undergrowth for cover. Tanner was the first to react, firing blindly in Ryan's general direction. "It's a trick," he shouted to the others. "There's only one of them." Ryan held his fire, not wanting to give away his position. Instead, he continued to move, working his way closer to the crashed SUV while maintaining the element of uncertainty. Inside the vehicle, Stella had finally managed to create an opening in the damaged carrier. With gentle precision, she began extracting her puppies one by one, pulling them to safety. Dr. Patel watched in amazement as the injured dog, despite her own pain, methodically rescued each of her offspring. Outside, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Mercer and his companions had spread out, using the trees for cover as they tried to locate Ryan. The rain had intensified, reducing visibility and making the sloped ground treacherously slippery. Ryan knew he couldn't maintain the standoff indefinitely. Sooner or later, one of Mercer's group would get lucky, or reinforcements would arrive. He needed to reach the SUV and get the survivors to safety. Taking a calculated risk, he fired 2 shots into the air, then sprinted toward a new position as Mercer's group reflexively fired toward the sound. The distraction allowed him to close the distance to the crashed vehicle. "Dr. Patel," he called softly as he reached the SUV. "Can you move?" "My leg's injured," she replied. "Nicole's unconscious, and the puppies." Ryan peered into the vehicle to see Stella still working to free her last puppy from the wreckage. 3 others huddled together in a relatively protected corner, wet and frightened, but apparently unharmed. "We need to get out of here," Ryan said urgently. "Can you help me with Nicole?" Together, they managed to unbuckle Nicole's seatbelt and ease her out through the broken windshield. Ryan lifted her over his shoulder in a firefighter's carry, grimacing under the weight, but knowing there was no alternative. "What about Stella and the puppies?" Dr. Patel asked, balancing on her good leg. Before Ryan could answer, a shot rang out, the bullet embedding itself in the tree trunk inches from his head. Tanner had spotted them. "Take cover," Ryan ordered, helping Dr. Patel behind the bulk of the SUV as more shots followed. He gently placed Nicole in the relative safety of a depression in the ground, then turned back toward the vehicle where Stella remained with her puppies. "Come on, girl," he called. "We have to move." Stella looked at him, then back at her puppies. The smallest one, the same that had been so ill the night before, was still trapped in the carrier, just beyond her reach. Her distress was palpable as she whined, torn between following Ryan's command and abandoning her offspring. "I'll get him," Ryan decided, knowing he was exposing himself to danger but unable to leave the puppy behind. He crawled back to the SUV, bullets pinging off the metal around him as Mercer's group continued firing. Reaching into the mangled carrier, Ryan finally located the missing puppy, unconscious but still breathing. As he pulled the tiny creature free, Stella's relief was evident in her entire body language. With the puppy secure in one hand, Ryan began the treacherous process of retreating while under fire. They had almost reached Dr. Patel's position when Ryan felt a sudden, white-hot pain tear through his shoulder. The impact spun him around, nearly causing him to lose his grip on the puppy. He staggered but remained upright, pushing through the pain to reach cover. "You're hit," Dr. Patel exclaimed, reaching for the puppy to free Ryan's hands. "It's not bad," he lied, feeling blood soaking his shirt. "We need to keep moving. The forest gets thicker downhill. We might lose them in the trees." As they prepared to move, Stella suddenly growled, her attention focused upslope. Following her gaze, Ryan saw Mercer approaching, shotgun raised. Without hesitation, Stella launched herself toward the threat, her police training overriding her injuries as she intercepted the man before he could fire. Mercer shouted in surprise and pain as 80 pounds of determined German Shepherd slammed into him, knocking him off balance on the slippery ground. His shotgun discharged harmlessly into the air as Stella's teeth found his arm, clamping down with the precision of her police training. The distraction gave Ryan the opening he needed. Drawing his service weapon with his uninjured arm, he took careful aim and fired. The shot caught Tanner in the leg as he moved to help Mercer, dropping him to the ground. The third man, Conley, apparently decided the odds had turned against them. He fired a few more wild shots before retreating up the embankment toward their truck. In the sudden lull, Ryan called to Stella. "Release, come." To his relief, the German Shepherd immediately obeyed, abandoning Mercer to return to Ryan's side. Her training, despite months of abuse and neglect, remained intact when it mattered most. The sound of approaching sirens filtered through the rain. Linda and the sheriff's deputies had finally found them. Mercer, clutching his bleeding arm, seemed to realize his situation was hopeless. He remained where he had fallen, making no further attempt to attack. As blue lights became visible on the road above, Ryan allowed himself to sink to the ground, the adrenaline that had kept him going now fading as the pain in his shoulder intensified. Beside him, Stella positioned herself protectively in front of her puppies, her body still alert despite her exhaustion. "Good girl?" Ryan murmured as darkness began to encroach on his vision. "You did good." The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was Stella's face looking into his, her intelligent eyes holding what seemed remarkably like concern. Then the world faded to black as the rain continued to fall around them. Ryan drifted in and out of consciousness as the paramedics worked on his shoulder. The gunshot wound had missed any major arteries but caused significant blood loss. Through a haze of pain and emergency medications, he caught glimpses of the chaotic scene. Linda directing officers, Nicole being loaded into an ambulance, Dr. Patel sitting on a gurney while a paramedic examined her injured leg. "The puppies," he managed to say, his voice barely audible over the rain and activity. "Where are the puppies?" The paramedic leaned closer. "Sir, try not to speak. We need to stabilize you for transport." Ryan tried to sit up, ignoring the searing pain in his shoulder. "Stella, the puppies, are they safe?" Linda appeared at his side, gently pressing him back onto the stretcher. "They're safe, Ryan. Dr. Patel has them. Now lie back and let these people do their job." Reluctantly, Ryan complied, allowing the paramedics to secure him for transport. As they lifted the stretcher, he caught sight of Stella being examined by a veterinary technician who had arrived with the backup. The German Shepherd's eyes met his briefly, and Ryan felt an unspoken understanding pass between them before the ambulance doors closed, cutting off his view. At the hospital, Ryan's wound required surgery to remove the bullet fragments and repair the damaged tissue. When he finally regained full consciousness in the recovery room, Chief Warren was sitting beside his bed, looking more haggard than Ryan had ever seen him. "Welcome back," the chief said, setting aside the coffee cup he'd been nursing. "Doctor says you'll make a full recovery, though physical therapy might be in your future for a while." Ryan nodded, his mouth dry from anesthesia. "Linda? Nicole?" "Linda's fine. Some cuts and bruises. Nicole has a concussion and a broken collarbone, but she'll recover." Warren paused, his expression becoming more grave. "You did good work out there, Mitchell. We got all three of them, Mercer, Tanner, and Conley. Conley tried to run, but the sheriff's deputies caught him about 5 miles down the road." Ryan processed this information, relief washing over him. Then he asked the question that had been foremost in his mind. "And Stella? The puppies?" Warren's hesitation told Ryan everything before he even spoke. "3 of the puppies are fine. They're at the animal hospital with Dr. Patel. Stella's got some new injuries from the crash and the fight with Mercer, but she'll pull through." Ryan closed his eyes, understanding the unspoken information. "The smallest puppy didn't make it, did he?" Warren shook his head slowly. "They did everything they could. Dr. Patel says the internal injuries from before the crash were too severe, and then the accident." He trailed off, not needing to finish the sentence. The news hit Ryan harder than he expected. He'd known the puppies' chances were slim, but during the desperate escape and firefight, he'd somehow convinced himself that they would all make it, that after everything Stella had endured to save her puppies, she deserved that much. "Does she know?" Ryan asked, his voice tight with emotion. Warren nodded. "Animals understand more than we give them credit for. Dr. Patel said Stella watched them try to resuscitate the pup. When they couldn't save him, she just knew." He paused. "She didn't make a sound, just laid her head down next to him for a while." Ryan turned his face away, not wanting the chief to see how much the story affected him. He told himself it was just the painkillers making him emotional, but deep down he knew better. The loss of the puppy felt personal, as if he had failed both the tiny creature and its mother. "I should have gotten them out faster," he said finally. "If I'd reached them before the crash." "Stop right there," Warren interrupted firmly. "You did everything humanly possible. You ran through a forest in a thunderstorm, faced armed suspects alone, and took a bullet getting them out. Nobody could have done more." Ryan nodded, but the weight of the loss remained heavy on his chest. In his mind, he kept seeing Stella's desperate attempts to free her puppies from the wreckage, her unwavering focus despite her own injuries. The smallest puppy had fought so hard to survive the previous night, only to be lost in the violence of Mercer's pursuit. The irony wasn't lost on Ryan. He had left Chicago and canine work because he couldn't bear the loss of his partner Max. Now, years later, he found himself emotionally invested in the fate of another German Shepherd and her offspring. Some wounds, it seemed, never fully healed. They just became part of who you were. 3 days later, Ryan was released from the hospital, his arm in a sling and strict instructions to avoid physical exertion. Linda picked him up, driving him not to his apartment as expected, but to the animal hospital where Stella and her surviving puppies were recovering. "I thought you might want to see them first," she explained, helping him from the car. "Dr. Patel says Stella's been restless, like she's looking for something or someone." The animal hospital was quiet, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the windows. Dr. Patel met them in the reception area, her leg in a walking boot, but otherwise recovered from the crash. "She's going to be happy to see you," Dr. Patel said, leading them toward the recovery kennels. "She perks up whenever someone in uniform comes in. I think she's been waiting for you." As they approached Stella's enclosure, Ryan felt an unexpected nervousness. What if she blamed him for the loss of her puppy? Animals might understand more than humans gave them credit for, but they couldn't comprehend the full circumstances of what had happened. His concerns proved unfounded. The moment Stella saw him, her tail began to wag, her entire body communicating recognition and welcome despite the bandages covering her new injuries. When Dr. Patel opened the kennel door, the German Shepherd rose carefully to her feet and approached Ryan, pressing her head gently against his hand. "Hey, girl," Ryan said softly, kneeling despite the pain in his shoulder. "I'm sorry about your little one." Stella looked at him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to hold such depth. There was sadness there, Ryan thought, but no accusation. If anything, her gaze held the same steady trust he'd seen when she first brought her puppies to the station. "She's been an extraordinary patient," Dr. Patel said. "Even with everything she's been through, she's gentle with the staff, protective of her remaining puppies without being aggressive. Her training shows in everything she does." Ryan nodded, understanding exactly what Dr. Patel meant. Stella exemplified the best qualities of police canines: intelligence, discipline, and an unwavering sense of duty. The fact that she had maintained these traits despite months of abuse spoke volumes about her character. "Where are the puppies?" he asked, noting their absence from Stella's kennel. Patel led them to a separate enclosure where the 3 surviving puppies were playing. Their eyes were open now, their movements more coordinated than the helpless creatures Stella had carried into the station just days ago. Despite everything they'd been through, they showed the resilient spirit of youth, tumbling over each other in a friendly wrestling match. "They're thriving," Dr. Patel said. "Another few weeks and they'll be ready for adoption, though we should probably wait until after the trial to make any permanent decisions." Ryan watched the puppies play, his heart both heavy and hopeful. The loss of the smallest puppy cast a shadow over their success, but seeing the 3 survivors growing stronger each day offered some consolation. Life continued, even in the face of tragedy. That evening, back in his apartment, Ryan found himself unable to sleep. The pain in his shoulder was part of it, but more troubling were the images that kept replaying in his mind. Stella desperately trying to reach her trapped puppy, the tiny creature lying still in his hand after the crash, the solemn procession, as Dr. Patel had carried the small body away. When his phone rang shortly after midnight, Ryan wasn't surprised to hear Linda's voice. She too had been struggling with the aftermath, the what-ifs and might-have-beens that followed any traumatic event. "I keep thinking about that puppy," she admitted, "and about Stella. After everything she did to save them, bringing them to us one by one when she could barely walk herself." "I know," Ryan said quietly. "It doesn't seem fair." They talked for nearly an hour, processing the events of the past few days. Linda shared what she'd learned about Tanner's operation, how he had falsified records for at least a dozen retired police dogs, sending them to Mercer's fighting ring where their training and intelligence made them valuable breeding stock. The corruption had spread beyond Millfield, with evidence suggesting officers in 2 other counties might be involved. "Chief Warren says it's going to be a major case," Linda told him. "Federal agencies are getting involved now that there's evidence of interstate trafficking." But for the officers involved, it's going to be ugly. The betrayal runs deep. Ryan understood that all too well. Police dogs were more than tools. They were partners, officers who served alongside their human counterparts with equal dedication and courage. To betray them, to condemn them to the brutality of dogfighting after years of loyal service, was unconscionable. "Did they do an autopsy on the puppy?" Ryan asked finally, the question he'd been avoiding. Linda was quiet for a moment. "Yes. Dr. Patel handled it personally." She paused. "Ryan, there's something you should know. The puppy, he wasn't Stella's." Ryan sat up, wincing as the movement jarred his injured shoulder. "What?" "DNA doesn't match. Dr. Patel says the puppy was at least a few weeks older than the others but severely malnourished, making him appear the same size, and his coloration was slightly different. Not noticeable unless you were looking for it." "But that means Stella rescued him," Linda finished. "Dr. Patel thinks there must have been another mother dog at the fighting operation. When Stella escaped with her own puppies, she took this one too." The revelation left Ryan stunned. Even in her desperate situation, Stella had extended her protection to a puppy that wasn't her own, carrying him to safety along with her biological offspring, treating him with the same care and devotion. And in the end, despite their best efforts, that selfless act of compassion hadn't been enough to save the little one. The tragedy felt even more profound now, layered with the knowledge of Stella's extraordinary empathy. As Ryan finally drifted toward sleep in the early hours of the morning, he found himself thinking about Max, his canine partner from Chicago. The German Shepherd had died protecting him, embodying the same selfless courage that Stella had demonstrated. Perhaps, Ryan thought as consciousness faded, that was the true tragedy. Not just the loss of the puppy, but the reality that such noble creatures could suffer so much at human hands, yet still choose to protect and serve. 2 weeks after the shootout on the mountain road, Ryan returned to light duty at the Oak Ridge Police Department. His shoulder remained in a sling, but he'd convinced Chief Warren that desk work would be better for his recovery than sitting alone in his apartment with nothing but painful memories for company. The station felt different now. The story of Stella and her puppies had transformed the atmosphere, creating a sense of shared purpose that transcended routine police work. The investigation into Tanner's operation had expanded rapidly. What began as a case of animal cruelty had blossomed into a multi-state investigation involving dogfighting rings, illegal gambling, and corruption within law enforcement. Federal agents had established a command center in a neighboring county, coordinating efforts to identify and arrest all participants in the criminal enterprise. Ryan was reviewing files from Millfield PD's internal investigation when Officer Wilson approached his desk, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "Got a minute, Mitchell?" Wilson asked, his usual bravado noticeably absent. Ryan nodded, gesturing to the chair beside his desk. The two officers had maintained a professional but distant relationship since their disagreement over department resources being dedicated to Stella's case. Now, Wilson sat down heavily, running a hand through his close-cropped hair. "I owe you an apology," he said bluntly. "About the dog, about Stella. I was wrong." Ryan studied the other officer carefully. "What changed your mind?" Wilson exhaled slowly. "I visited Dr. Patel's clinic yesterday, saw Stella and the puppies, and," he paused, seeming to choose his words carefully, "I recognized her." Ryan's attention sharpened. "Recognized her? From where?" "From Millfield, before I transferred here." Wilson's gaze dropped to his hands. "I worked patrol there for 5 years before moving to the county sheriff's department. Stella was one of their K-9s, belonged to Sergeant Reeves in narcotics. I saw her work a few times." He hesitated again. "And I saw her the day she was retired." Ryan leaned forward, a creeping suspicion forming in his mind. "You were there when she was handed over for adoption?" Wilson nodded, his expression grim. "Tanner handled the paperwork. Said he'd found a perfect family for her. Former military guy with a big farm, lots of space for a retired police dog to live out her days in comfort." "But you didn't follow up," Ryan surmised. "None of you did." "We trusted the system," Wilson admitted. "Trusted Tanner. He'd placed retired canines for years, had a good reputation." His jaw tightened. "I never thought to question it. None of us did." Ryan absorbed this information, pieces clicking into place. Wilson's initial resistance to helping Stella hadn't just been about department resources. It had been about guilt. Whether conscious or not, he'd recognized her on some level, and that recognition had triggered defensive denial. "There's more," Wilson said, his voice dropping to ensure they weren't overheard. "I've been going through my old case files from Millfield. 3 months before Stella was retired, I arrested a man for drug possession during a traffic stop. Routine case, nothing special, except—" "Let me guess," Ryan interrupted. "Darren Mercer?" Wilson nodded. He was driving the same black pickup, had a small amount of meth, enough for possession charges but not trafficking. What's interesting is how the case disappeared. Charges dropped, no explanation. I complained to my sergeant, but he told me to let it go. Ryan's mind raced, connecting the dots. Tanner's corruption started earlier than we thought. He was already working with Mercer, making cases go away. And my sergeant knew. Wilson confirmed. I can't prove it, but the timing fits. 3 months later, Stella gets retired early for an injury that should have been treatable with physical therapy and handed directly to Mercer through fake adoption papers. The implications were staggering. The corruption wasn't just one rogue records officer, it extended into the command structure of the Millfield Police Department. Stella hadn't simply escaped from a dogfighting operation. She had recognized police uniforms and deliberately sought help from officers she believed would be trustworthy, outside the jurisdiction where she'd been betrayed. "There's something else you should know," Wilson said, his voice now barely above a whisper. "Stella didn't just recognize the station when she came in that day. She recognized me." Ryan stared at him, the final piece of the puzzle falling into place. "That's why you wanted us to turn her over to the county shelter. You were afraid she'd somehow expose your connection to Millfield." Wilson nodded, shame evident in his expression. "I panicked. I wasn't involved in Tanner's operation. I swear that on my badge. But I knew if the investigation expanded to include Millfield, questions would be asked about why I transferred out so suddenly." "Why did you?" Ryan asked. "Because I suspected something was wrong," Wilson admitted. "Cases disappearing, evidence missing, canines being retired for questionable reasons. I couldn't prove anything, and when I raised concerns, my sergeant made it clear my career would suffer. So I transferred out rather than fight it." He looked directly at Ryan. "I took the coward's way out." Ryan absorbed this confession, his feelings mixed. On one hand, Wilson had abandoned his duty to expose corruption. On the other, he was coming forward now, at significant professional risk. "Does Chief Warren know about this?" Ryan asked finally. Wilson shook his head. "You're the first person I've told. I'm going to his office next." Ryan nodded slowly. "I'll go with you. But first, there's something we need to check." He pulled out the file containing Stella's service records, flipping to the medical reports documenting her career-ending injury. "The vet who signed off on her retirement, do you know him?" Wilson looked at the signature. "Dr. Lawrence Prentice." "Yeah, he handled all the K-9 medical work in Millfield." "And did he have a connection to your sergeant?" Wilson's eyes widened slightly. They were brothers-in-law. Sergeant Hayes was married to Prentice's sister. Ryan closed the file with a sense of grim satisfaction. "That's our link. False medical reports to justify early retirement, corrupt sergeant to override any objections, and Tanner to handle the paperwork sending her to Mercer." He looked at Wilson. "And now we have a witness who can connect all three." Before they could head to Chief Warren's office, Linda burst through the door, her expression a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "Ryan, you need to see this." She was carrying a tablet, which she placed on his desk. On the screen was security camera footage, date-stamped the day Stella had first appeared at their station. The tech team recovered this from the gas station across the street. They were checking for sightings of Mercer's truck, but they found something else. Ryan and Wilson watched as the grainy footage showed Stella approaching the police station. The German Shepherd was moving slowly, clearly injured, the first puppy gripped gently in her mouth. But what caught Ryan's attention was her behavior before entering. She didn't proceed directly to the door. Instead, she circled the building first, peering through windows as if checking who was inside. She wasn't just seeking safety, Linda said, voicing what they were all thinking. She was looking for specific people. or avoiding them. Avoiding me, Wilson said quietly. She recognized my patrol car in the lot. You can see her reaction when she spots it. She almost leaves. Then she circles around to look through the windows, probably making sure I wasn't near the front desk before she entered. The footage continued, showing Stella's careful approach, her deliberate assessment of the situation before committing to enter. This wasn't the desperate dash of an animal seeking random shelter. It was the calculated approach of an intelligence operative, identifying safe contacts while avoiding potential threats. She knew, Ryan said, awe in his voice. She knew exactly what she was doing, who to trust and who to avoid. Wilson nodded, his face pale. And she made a choice to trust you, not me. She's not just smart, she remembers who stood by while she was betrayed. The revelation landed like a physical weight on the room. Stella hadn't randomly chosen their station for refuge. She had deliberately selected it after confirming that Ryan and Linda were present, officers she didn't recognize from her past, while avoiding Wilson, whom she associated with the department that had failed her. We need to show this to Chief Warren immediately, Linda said. This changes everything. Stella isn't just a victim or a witness. She's a whistleblower. As they headed toward the chief's office, Ryan's mind was racing. The case had transformed from a simple animal cruelty investigation to something far more profound, a deliberate act of justice initiated by a being who couldn't speak but had found a way to expose corruption nonetheless. Stella, despite everything humans had done to her, had not only saved her puppies, but had strategically sought out those she believed would help her reveal a truth that had remained hidden for too long. The implications were staggering. If Stella had deliberately chosen which humans to trust, had recognized corruption within the police force itself, and had taken action to expose it, it raised fundamental questions about how society viewed and valued animal intelligence and moral agency. This wasn't just a case about animal cruelty anymore. It was about recognizing that a non-human being had made ethical choices and acted on them with purpose and courage. As they prepared to present their findings to Chief Warren, Ryan felt the weight of responsibility settle on him. Stella had chosen him, had trusted him, to bring her story to light. He wouldn't let her down. 1 year after Stella first limped into the Oak Ridge police station with her puppies, the small town gathered for a ceremony unlike any in its history. The municipal park, usually reserved for holiday celebrations and summer concerts, had been transformed with rows of chairs facing a small podium. Banners celebrating the Canine Heroes program fluttered in the gentle May breeze, and photographs of Stella and her puppies lined the pathway leading to the seating area. Ryan stood at the edge of the crowd, his police uniform freshly pressed for the occasion. His shoulder had healed well, though occasional twinges during cold weather served as permanent reminders of that day on the mountain. Beside him, Stella sat at perfect attention, her coat gleaming in the sunlight, the official canine service vest she wore marking her return to active duty. The trial of Mercer, Tanner, and their associates had concluded 3 months earlier with convictions on all counts. The evidence provided by Wilson had proven crucial, his testimony helping federal prosecutors dismantle not just the dogfighting operation, but the network of corrupt officers who had enabled it. 4 officers from Millfield PD, including Sergeant Hayes, now faced lengthy prison sentences for their roles in the conspiracy. Wilson himself had received immunity in exchange for his cooperation. Though he'd left Oak Ridge shortly after his confession, the weight of his colleagues' judgment too heavy to bear, Ryan had heard he was working with an animal welfare organization, using his police experience to train investigators in recognizing signs of animal fighting operations. Chief Warren approached, nodding toward the filling seats. "Quite a turnout," he observed. "Never thought I'd see the day when the entire town showed up to celebrate a dog." Ryan smiled, watching as Linda escorted Dr. Patel to a reserved seat in the front row. "She's not just any dog, Chief. You know that better than most." Warren nodded, his weathered face softening as he looked at Stella. "That I do. Change this department for the better, that's for sure." He glanced at his watch. "Almost time. You ready?" Ryan nodded, giving Stella's head a gentle pat before following the chief toward the podium. The crowd quieted as Mayor Jenkins, The same Martha Jenkins who had once questioned the allocation of police resources to Stella's case stepped up to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on this special day," she began, her voice carrying across the park. "1 year ago, a remarkable series of events began in our town. Events that would test our values, challenge our assumptions, and ultimately strengthen our community in ways none of us could have imagined." The mayor's speech was brief but heartfelt, acknowledging how the case had initially divided the town before ultimately bringing it together around a shared commitment to justice. As she spoke, Ryan found himself scanning the crowd, noting familiar faces. Nicole Parker, fully recovered from her injuries, Officer Ramirez, who had stepped up to help with the investigation in Ryan's absence. Even Dr. Prentice, the veterinarian from Millfield, who had eventually turned state's evidence against Hayes and Tanner. "And now," Mayor Jenkins concluded, "I'd like to invite Chief Warren to the podium to present today's special commendations." The chief stepped forward, adjusting the microphone with one hand while holding a leather portfolio in the other. "Thank you, Mayor Jenkins. Before we proceed with today's ceremony, I'd like to take a moment to recognize how far we've come as a department and as a community." He detailed the changes implemented in the wake of Stella's case, the establishment of an animal crimes unit within the Oak Ridge Police Department, new protocols for monitoring the welfare of retired police animals, and a partnership with the state police to provide ongoing training for officers in recognizing and investigating animal abuse as a potential indicator of broader criminal activity. The investigation that began with one brave dog seeking help has now resulted in the dismantling of fighting rings in 3 states, the recovery of 17 former police K-9s, and a complete overhaul of how departments across the region handle the retirement of service animals, Warren said, pride evident in his voice. "But perhaps most importantly, it has reminded us that justice knows no species barrier, that the duty to protect and serve extends to all the vulnerable, whether they walk on 2 legs or 4. The crowd applauded warmly as Warren opened the portfolio. "And now, it is my honor to officially welcome the newest member of the Oak Ridge Police Department's K-9 unit, or perhaps I should say, welcome back a returning officer to active duty." Ryan stepped forward with Stella at his side, her posture perfect as she approached the podium. The chief knelt down, presenting a new badge that gleamed in the sunlight. "Officer Stella Mitchell, in recognition of your extraordinary service, your unwavering courage, and your commitment to justice against all odds, I hereby reinstate you as a full member of the Oak Ridge Police Department's K-9 unit, with all the rights, protections, and honors such service entails." The symbolic gesture, attaching the badge to Stella's service vest, drew a standing ovation from the crowd. Ryan felt a lump form in his throat as he witnessed the public recognition of what he had known all along. That Stella was not just an animal, but a true officer, worthy of the same respect accorded to any human wearing the badge. As the applause continued, Warren signaled for attention once more. "And now, I believe we have some special guests who wouldn't miss this ceremony for the world." On cue, Linda appeared from a side path, leading 3 young German shepherds, no longer puppies but not quite adults, their resemblance to their mother unmistakable. At the sight of her offspring, Stella's disciplined demeanor momentarily faltered, her tail wagging as the young dogs approached. The reunification of Stella with her puppies, now adopted by carefully selected families in and around Oak Ridge, provided the emotional highlight of the ceremony. Though they had been separated for their training and socialization, the bond between mother and offspring remained evident in their interactions, drawing smiles and a few tears from the assembled crowd. Ryan watched with particular pride as the 3 young dogs demonstrated the basic skills they had learned in their respective new homes. One was being trained as a therapy dog for the local hospital, another as a search and rescue dog for the county emergency services, and the third, to everyone's surprise, had been adopted by Dr. Patel herself, who was training him to help comfort anxious animals at her clinic. As the formal ceremony concluded and people began to mingle, Ryan found himself approached by a couple he didn't recognize, a man and woman in their 60s, their expressions hesitant but determined. "Officer Mitchell," the woman said, We're Thomas and Marie Reeves. We've been wanting to meet you. Ryan placed the name immediately. Sergeant Reeves, Stella's former handler from Millfield. The man nodded, emotion evident in his weathered face. Ex-sergeant now. I retired after everything came out. He looked past Ryan to where Stella was accepting gentle pats from children under Linda's watchful eye. I've been trying to work up the courage to come see her for months. Ryan studied the man carefully, noting the pain in his eyes. You didn't know what happened to her after her retirement, did you? Reeves shook his head. I was told she went to a good home, a family with land outside the city. Hayes showed me the paperwork, all signed and official. I never questioned it. His voice broke slightly. She was my partner for 4 years. I should have checked, should have followed up. Ryan felt his initial suspicion softening. She was injured in the line of duty? Chasing a suspect through an abandoned building, Reeves confirmed. Fell through some rotted floorboards. The injury wasn't career-ending. At least I didn't think so. But Hayes and the department vet insisted she couldn't recover fully. That retirement was the humane option. He looked down. I fought it, but eventually gave in. Biggest mistake of my life. His wife touched his arm supportively. We've been following the case from the beginning, she said. When we heard what really happened, that Thomas's sergeant was involved in sending police dogs to fighting rings, it nearly destroyed him. Ryan nodded, understanding the man's guilt. Would you like to see her? Reeves's expression was a mixture of hope and fear. Do you think she'd remember me? Only one way to find out, Ryan said, gesturing for them to follow him. As they approached, Stella's attention immediately shifted from the children to the newcomers. Her reaction was instantaneous, ears forward, body alert, eyes fixed intently on Reeves. For a moment, no one moved. Then, with a dignity that seemed almost human, Stella walked directly to her former handler and sat at his feet, looking up at him with unmistakable recognition. Reeves knelt slowly, his hand trembling as he reached out to her. Hello, old friend, he whispered. I've missed you. The reunion between handler and canine partner brought the day's events full circle. As Ryan watched Stella lean into Reeves's embrace, he reflected on the journey that had brought them all to this moment. The journey that began with a desperate mother's courage and ended with justice, redemption, and a community forever changed by the extraordinary actions of one remarkable dog. In the golden afternoon light, with Stella surrounded by both her human and canine families, Ryan felt the final pieces of his own healing fall into place. The wounds from his past, the loss of Max, the withdrawal from canine work, the self-imposed isolation had finally begun to close, replaced by new bonds and renewed purpose. Stella had come to them seeking help in her darkest hour. In saving her, Ryan realized he had also saved himself. In our sunset years, we often reflect on the values that truly matter: loyalty, courage, and the power of second chances. Stella's journey reminds us that it's never too late to stand up for what's right, even when betrayed by those we trusted most. Like Officer Ryan, many of us carry invisible wounds from past failures or losses, convincing ourselves that isolation is safer than risking our hearts again. But Stella's unwavering dedication to protect the vulnerable, even when she herself was broken, shows us that our greatest purpose often emerges from our deepest pain. Her story teaches us that true healing comes not from avoiding suffering, but from facing it alongside others who share our burdens. As we navigate our senior years, may we remember that our experiences, both painful and joyful, have prepared us to be beacons of wisdom and compassion in a world that desperately needs both. Like Stella, our greatest contribution may still lie ahead, if only we have the courage to trust again. I hope you enjoyed today's story. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories like this. Leave a like and comment below what you thought of the story. See you in the next video.